What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back to the Mosh Pit Reviews, where yours truly, Thrash Maniac 99, reviews heavy metal albums in the calendar year of 2019. And today, I'm reviewing an album that came out this past weekend that I completely forgot to make the review video for until now, and it's one of the big underground releases of the year because, quite simply, this band has been on a tear pretty much throughout their entire discography. And it is the new album from Finnish melodic death metal masters Insomnium, entitled Heart Like a Grave. So, I believe I reviewed Winter's Gate when it came out in 2016, and I thought it was one of the best albums of 2016, no doubt about it. But a little history refresher for you guys who may have not have listened to or heard about Insomnium in a long time, or just are getting into the band. So Insomnium is a band from Finland that formed in about 97, late 90s. They didn't start putting out material until about the early to mid 2000s. And every single album they've put out has been well received by critics and fans alike, especially their last two albums. In particular, Winter's Gate in 2016, because it was a one-song album at over 40 minutes long, and people heralded that album as kind of like the modern-day Crimson. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the album Crimson by Edge of Sanity, which was 1996, where it was a 140-minute song album idea, and Insomnium took cues from bands such as Edge of Sanity and Opeth on that album. Now, as far as an overall sound that we're talking about with Insomnium, it's melodic death metal with elements of progressive metal and doom metal, because there are a lot of slow parts, slow, atmospheric, somber moments in their discography, along with a songwriting that's not typical of melodic death metal standards. Not the whole verse, chorus, bridge. Their style of songwriting is very progressive oriented, which is always a plus for me because I like progressive music. So with Heart Like a Grave, the reason why this review is perhaps shorter than other reviews I've done as of late is simply because from top to bottom, you want to talk about an album of beautiful yet somber moments. This is definitely an album like that. I can kind of compare it a little bit to the Swallow the Sun album that came out at the beginning of the year. Plus, both bands from Finland, so there's a big kinship there between those two bands. So there are a lot of moments on Heart Like a Grave that, if, say, you were in like a sad mood, it would probably get you to cry a little bit, because the melodies are just so beautiful, and the way that they write their melodies in such a somber but yet dark fashion really speaks volumes of what this band can convey emotionally to you, the listener. But there is still plenty of heaviness on this album. Like, that's always been a major criticism I find a lot of people have with melodic death metal, especially in recent years, that it lacks heaviness. There is some heavy riffs on this album, but what really adds to the makeup of this album is the way in which the melodies are performed and written. Whereas some mellow death bands, Arch Enemy for example, just write melodic riffs for the sake of melodic riffs that aren't necessarily that great. And I feel like there are some bands within the melodic death metal subgenre from the past that perhaps need to look back to the past and think, well, what made us so good? Bands like In Flames, for example, who has really went down to the bottom of the barrel over the course of about 2 decades, which is a sad, sad story considering they were heralded as one of the greatest bands of the 90s and early 2000s until they changed to a more alternative sound, and it doesn't work. Arch Enemy, pretty much writing the same idea over and over again. Even with Jeff Loomis a part of the band, they're so lost. Thankfully, you have a band like Insomnium who's keeping the spirit of melodic death metal alive, the true melodic death metal sound of the combination of Iron Maiden melodies and death metal, while adding in some other influences, doom and prog, the primary ones. And from top to bottom with this album, like, the songs flow together beautifully, especially the first few tracks. They all kind of connect to each other, vocally speaking. The two vocal approaches, the gruff vocals and the clean vocals. I really like bands who can do the what's known as Beauty and the Beast or good cop, bad cop vocals and do it well. I mean, bands like Fear Factory pretty much kind of invented the style of good cop, bad cop vocals within bands. And Insomnium definitely keeps that kind of tradition on. Although it's definitely more death vocals, there are some clean vocals on this album that are pretty impressive and pretty surprising. Maybe they're not like the crazy high operatic stuff of, say, like King Diamond or Rob Halford, but good, beautiful melodic singing. So really, overall, like I said, top to bottom, there is not a wasted moment, in my personal opinion. And the ending track, Corellia, the instrumental, probably one of the best metal instrumental songs I have heard in a long time. It is a beautiful instrumental, and hell, even the two bonus tracks that you get with the deluxe edition have two instrumental songs, but I'm purely judging the 10-track standard affair. So overall, this is definitely a top 5 album of the year contender right now. I'm giving it a 38 out of 40. Not quite there with Opeth or Rammstein or even Swallow the Sun, but if I get into it more after this listen, I might consider bumping it up the list a little bit. But I tell you, when we get to that top 10 album of the year episode for the Horseman podcast, it's going to be a battle of fire and water in my brain to figure out how I'm going to construct that list. And this album certainly doesn't help that, because this is such a beautiful album. I highly recommend everyone who's watching this to give it a listen. If you can't buy it just yet for physical media, I would suggest you check it out on YouTube or check it out on Spotify. At least for your first few listens, and then, when you got the time and money, get the album. It is wonderful. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching this review of Heart Like a Grave by Insomnium. Let me know in the comments section below. As far as what I'm going to review next, more likely I'm going to do the Entrails album, which comes out tomorrow. I might do the review tomorrow, or I might wait a little bit. We'll see what happens. But until next time, peace out, and I will see you next time. Well, it was Dorian Facepuncher who led the first lap of the day, as he's got his teammate Dylan Young right behind him, as they're both out of Young Motorsports working together for the time being. And then I see two Gibbs cars working together. Although I think I just saw, oh my goodness, a massive crash! This is the huge one at Talladega. That's about half the field in a car flipping wildly. That's Anthony McCrory. Holy cow.